Hello traders, and welcome to tonight's ADX Mastery live webinar event for active stock and Forex traders. This is Ken Calhoun broadcasting live Tuesday, September 14th in the evening here at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern. Now we're going to be looking at new techniques and strategies and tickers for what are moving the strongest in the current markets, using the ADX as a filtering indicator to help us identify what's most volatile in our current market, which is very helpful because we have many different volatile stocks right now. As I'm recording this, the key is how to cut through those, and ADX is a very good tool to help you narrow the list of what to trade and how to trade it. So we'll be covering how that works in tonight's event, and as always, if you have any questions, feel free to post them. As always, I'm required to mention that by participating in this event, you hereby agree not to make any actual trades based on the information presented herein. These are not to be used as trade alerts for paper trading and educational use only. Typical customer results are that all traders incur trading losses. Most don't become profitable because trading is a high-risk speculative activity. Okay, our goals for tonight's event. I've got a few things here for you. The first is obviously big picture to help improve your ability to use ADX step by step to spot both early potential winning swing and day trade stock and FX pair breakouts. One of the things we want to look at tonight too is how to use ADX and what are uptrending patterns versus downside reversals or pivots. And I'll teach you a few insights using current market charts on how that works. We also want to look at how to combine ADX with ranges and volume breakouts, some of the typical Western indicators we use, and of course answer any questions you might have for how to use it correctly. Main strategy is to use and again, I use the ADX primarily for swing trading, though it's also good to identify what's in motion for intraday trades for the day or two after the ADX breaks over 40 as a signal line. So it's useful for both intraday and swing trading, but primarily for swing traders. And I like using a 55-day, 60-minute candle chart with ADX using the 14-step default parameter. And again, in that we use the red ADX line. We'd like to look for stocks that have an ADX red line over 40. For currency pairs, I drop that to 30. That we can be a bit more sensitive, a bit earlier with our Forex currency pairs. But for stocks, I like over 40. You want to trade breakouts during the 1 to 3 days following the day in which ADX breaks over that 40 for stocks or over 30 for currency pairs. And once in, of course, we want to scale in, position size in on breakout winner continuations, trailing stops closely once the ADX drops back down under that 40 line for stocks or 30 for FX. So make sure that you understand the basics here. These are the primary strategies. The trick is, I guess, getting the nuances correct in terms of understanding how that works in actual trading situations and actual real charts. And that's what we'll be focusing tonight's event on. Just one last slide here before we move on to the charts, and that's that we like to use what's called the night before ADX over 40 quote box. And what I mean by that is I'll show this to you. I like to use a dedicated quote box in which I'll populate it with no more than, say, 12 to 15 different tickers. Tonight I've got a dozen for you, and I want you to keep an eye on those during our days ahead. But it's just a way to segregate or separate out those tickers that have an ADX over 40 signal that's either in play or about to be in play, so that you can keep those distinct from your overall quote box. It's a very good strategy I developed, and it's a good way to create a sandbox, so to speak, or in engineering terms, a sandbox, or a place where we can beta test out these ADX patterns different, separately from the rest of our stock tickers that might be in your broad portfolio. Second, we want to set multiple continuation entries as long as the ADX stays over 40 in direction of the trend. It stays over 40 and you're in trend in a position. Then we want to scale up with multiple buy stop orders, and I teach how to do that with my various position sizing training. But just the basic thinking is once it breaks out in your favor, with following an ADX over 40 signal, then you want to add to a winning position. For swing trade, I like to add to that, say if it's moved at least a point or so in my favor. For intraday trades, I might use anywhere from 8 to 18 cents and scale into it. So depends on what type of trader you are, but the ADX over 40 is a good reason to stay in a trade as long as the price is still going in your direction. And once it drops back under the 40, then you want to tighten in any stops for those open positions. That's a very smart strategy. I'll teach you how that works. We also want to monitor during the pre-market for gaps when setting stops with ADX over 40. And by that I mean every time there's a gap, you will usually also get an ADX over 40, and that's meaningless because the virtue of the gap throws off or skews the ADX signal. So, the way that it's calculated will produce an ADX over 40 on any gap. And since we can visually see gaps, we don't use the ADX as a signal line. So when ADX is over 40 on a gap stock, that doesn't mean anything. So just make sure you understand that nuance. And then finally, we want to use the day's gain and loss list for our initial scans and then move into it from there. So that's kind of it for the theory and the PowerPoint charts. And let's take a look at the real mechanics of the trade. What I want to do at this point is go through a dozen different tickers, and you're welcome to write them down, but can someone do the research for me if you guys can find anything that's, how to say, it will, something that I can thumbtack that will stay on top of the e-signal window, kind of like how the Interactive Brokers window will do that. I'm just using Notepad here, and every time I click from that to this, it obscures this and I have to re-click it. But these are the ones that I want you to pay attention to. I'll give you a minute to jot those down if you want, and we'll come back and forth to those, so you'll have multiple opportunities to jot those down. But those are the ones that have ADX at or just over the 40 right now that I want us to start paying attention to. And we're going to take a look at how that works in. It's the easiest way to do that is just to migrate them to our ADX over 40 night before scans, the dedicated quote box. And what I mean by that is this. You want to keep this is what I mentioned earlier, you want to keep a quote box like this that has just a dozen or 15 stock, and if you trade currency pairs, the Forex pair symbols for what you're trading for ADX breaking over 40. So let's take a look at, we're going to primarily focus this presentation on the swing trading charts. I'll kind of keep this one in view in the back for you as well. Let's see how ADX, the red ADX line is over 40 here for this one. I think it's Great Pacific T, Great Atlantic Pacific T, something like that. Yeah, Great Atlantic and PAC T, whatever. So it's breaking over 40. So even though it's a relatively cheap stock, the fact that it made that breakout is one that tells me that that should be on our radar. Now, one that we were looking at this morning was Newmont Mining. This one, a very good breakout, but we did not see a corresponding ADX over 40. So and I guess the reason to highlight that is that you can still have breakouts without having a corresponding ADX signal. What this tells me, though, is to stand clear of a continuation in, say, buying Newmont over 64 because I don't have a supporting ADX over 40. So if you miss the breakout, the initial breakout in the morning today, the fact that we drop back down, and in fact, if you were to put this on a candle chart, you would probably see on some time interval, some kind of shooting star type patterns emerge, which would tell us, I don't see any there. Now that's almost a shooting star. Anyway, it tells us to stand clear as just a candle confirmation signal, right? So one of the things you want to do is intelligently combine this stuff and say to yourself, okay, Newmont Mining broke out, maybe you missed this initial run up during the morning along with all the other gold sector stocks. Hopefully you guys didn't miss that, but if you did, you'd want to use ADX over 40 as a filter. If it's under 40, you don't want to initiate a new position. You want to wait until it breaks over 40 to tell you there's likely to be a strong continuation. So the thinking for that is it should help keep us out of false breakouts. On the other hand, this one's Chico's, right? Chico's CHS, it does have a red ADX right at the 40. It didn't break the 40, but it's close. So we'll keep this one on the radar for potential moves tomorrow and the next day. Again, CHS it also had a nice breakout, a full 1 point breakout on a $9 stock, right? A 10% run or 9% run up from the open, from 9, well, closed off at 990. So ADX red ADX is over 40. It's best, by the way, to see the red ADX over both the green and the blue signal lines. When you don't have that, we don't have that in this one, then this one isn't as strong a signal as if we were to have that. But that's just another good example that I wanted to bring to your attention. Here's yet another one, Gymboree, and these are coming up in our retail sector. Gymboree not at a 55-day high, but ADX almost at the 40, not quite, but because it's close, I'm going to put that one on the watch list, and because it's at a 2-day high breakout continuation. Okay? So we've got ADX almost at 40. Keep that one on the radar for potential continuation play. Again, it would be best to see this over the green line when you're looking at an actual entry, so keep that in mind as well. Let's take a look here at JCPenney's and also Nordstrom's. Really nice. In addition to Best Buy, JCP has a really good pattern on both the fact that the red ADX is over the green line here and over 40, right? And we do have a nice 2-day high continuation breakout. Ran up nearly 2 points today from 22.5 to 24, so 1.5 point run in JCP. So that one definitely makes the grade for potential breakouts. And because ADX is over 40, remember that's not a directional indicator. It's also a primarily a volatility indicator. So this tells me that this one is simply in play. May well be a good short, say under 23.4 or so tomorrow. Let's say it opens up here tomorrow morning and starts to sell down. Well, I might sell it at 23.4. I might buy it at 24.6. The ADX over 40 merely serves to tell us that there is a lot of volatility in this particular stock, and so it's worth keeping on the radar for both long and short entries. Okay. Nordstrom's, same sector, different stock. JW Nordstrom's, JWN in our retail sector, also a nice 2-day high breakout. Two-day high breakout continuation here. And you can see that this one is almost at the 55-day high. The red ADX line is over the 40. Okay, do you see that? It's broken out over the 40, and it's also above the green DMI line. So that's a good signal for a potential breakout continuation or a fade, either way. But this is one that's worth a trade or worth taking a shot at on a continuation play if it's able to take out new highs. Only caveat to this one is resistance is right there. This is why I like these 55-day charts, because they define a cup, right? So I would not buy this until it breaks 36, say 36.08 or 36.2, somewhere just over 36. We don't want to buy right under the previous high, which, as you can see from back here, is right around 35.7, 35.8. So if you did not have that information, you might be tempted to buy 35.7, but since that's the previous resistance, you'd be buying at exact resistance, where there's likely to be some battle or some consolidation at a minimum before it continues. So for that reason, I'd want to stand clear and wait for breakout to continue, only if it gets up to new highs. All right, let's take a look at others. And again, this is fairly straightforward. It's a good filtering strategy. I only reveal this during these ADX webinars. I normally do not put the ADX signal line on the charts for the general webinars that I do, because I want to reserve that information for you guys. I use this myself in my own scanning each night, by the way, just so you know. I pull up the ADX and I make these charts, and I tuck these over here out of view, but this is one of the things that I use in my own trades, is I'll have the ADX over 40 quote box, and I'll use that to help me initiate my own trade. So that's one thing I wanted to share with you in terms of a fairly step-by-step, straightforward process. Now, one question that always comes up is, well, Ken, where do you find these tickers to populate this and to scan through? Well, the quick answer is, you sort your own personal quote box by percent change, and I like to focus on stocks that are over $10 a share for the most part. And some of them, like SOL, for example, moved up nicely, but ADX is way down at 30, so I'm not going to pay attention to that. Delta, same story. Nice 2-day high breakout, but ADX is way down at 25, so I'll skip that. The first one that meets the criteria is the GYMB, and that just barely, just under the 40, but not quite. ILMN does not. It's way down at 30, right? So you see that. Those are the types of things that we want to look at. JWN is on my quote box, and that one did break over the 40, so that one made it to the list, right? So that's one place. The other place, obviously, is just to use the general percent gain and loss list, even though that requires more manual work. You pull up the percent gainers and percent losers in both NYSE and the NASDAQ and click through those that have at least 1 million shares or so move and see which of those have a move over 40. So GAP and CHS, that's where I came up with those two from. Many of these, and JCP does, but many of these others do not meet that criteria, and so therefore did not make it to the list. So that's how you use these kind of lockstep or hand in hand, is go through the percent gain list and see if, for example, Best Buy, another good example of one, a nice breakout open range this morning, sold off. In my live room, I had posted a short, call it 37.4, which was perfect, but other than that, not quite over the 40, worth keeping an eye on, obviously, but since we're not over the 40, I'm not putting it on the list. So that's the type that you look at, the percent gain, the percent loss list, see if any of these meet our criteria for ADX over 40. Here's an example of one, FBC, sold off sharply into the close, but ADX is still way down at 20, so it doesn't make the grade. If we look at NASDAQ, percent gainers, and you go through this list, this one did make the grade, and that's why it's on my list, and we'll cover that one in a bit, but RDWR, nice sharp breakout, right? This one ran from 29 all the way up to 39, right? A 10-point run. And the ADX, obviously well over 40. What I want you to notice, though, is the power of the ADX as a lead indicator. Remember, I tell you guys, the ADX over 40 is good for a signal for anywhere up to 3 sessions out, from 1 to 3. Typically, you look for the breakout in the day following the ADX over 40, but as far as 3 days out, and that worked out great for anybody who was a trader in RDWR, because ADX over 40 back here on the 9th was certainly a great lead indicator for good things to come on today's session, just 3 trading sessions later. So you see how that works? ADX broke the 40 back here, and then bang, it moved up further, right? You don't always get, you're not very rare to get a 10-point run kind of thing in anything, but ADX still remains high. ADX did not fade back down under the 40 on the consolidation today. It continues on up, so this is one that's worth a close look for continuation plays as well. Okay, well, let's get back to it. JAG, our next ticker, Jaguar Mining, so that's one of the many mining stocks that took off today. Kind of cheap, not so good for intraday trading, but for swing trading, the chart looks fine, right? ADX over 40, coming off a consolidation. Main stop loss would be down at 5.5. I might look at this for a new long, say at 6.88 or so, or 6.9, somewhere just above the high kind of thing. But because ADX moved over 40 today, that told me that we'd had a good breakout. Just like ADX over 40 back here, and several days later, it made a pop-up. So this is another good example of one to keep an eye on. In the gold sector, AU, a good example after the periodic table elements for those who remember your college chemistry. AU, anyway, nice breakout in that, right? 45 to 47.8. The high gave back a little bit into the close, but still a really nice 2-day high breakout continuation. And as I teach, we like to buy gap up minor cup continuations, right? You see a minor bullish cup there, and that's the breakout trigger at just over 45.5 here, and bang, it had plenty of headspace here to move up. What I like about this, again, is ADX is over 40, and it's just barely over the green DMI line, or just at it. It looks like they're intersecting right here. So this is a good signal to keep an eye on. We'll see which way it breaks. Looks like it was trading down at 44.5, so looks like it gave it all back or something in after-hours trade, but I don't really pay too much attention to that. We'll see what it does in market, closing off here on 46.7. So you see that, how the ADX is over 40? So that tells us that this one's likely to be in motion. AU coming up. Our next one, GLW. Corning, right? Glassware. Yeah, that's what GLW is for, glassware. I knew there was a reason behind the ticker. Anyway, good two-day high breakout. Decent, really good volume, actually. 180, 200, 300,000 shares a minute. Plenty of volume in Corning here today. ADX is right at, not quite over the 40 yet, but because it's close to it, and we had a good two-day high breakout on strong volume, right? This volume is higher than opening volume previous day. That tells me that GLW is worth keeping an eye on for potential trades as well. Next up, RDWR. This is a real strong stock. I'm going to assume this was some good news, right? That hit the wire and shot this thing up nearly 10 points and went up 8 points in just a matter of 6 minutes or so. I always resist the temptation to find out what the news was because I really don't care and I don't want it to unduly influence me. All I care about is price. So let's say this with this kind of chart, these may well gap. It will gap one direction or the other. I'd be very surprised if it opens at 38.5 tomorrow morning, right? It'll probably open down at 36 or up at 41, somewhere in wherever it opens. This is one in play. ADX well over 40. Again, ADX broke the 40 exactly 3 sessions, boom, 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 like I said earlier, before the strong breakout. That's one that's worth keeping on the radar for potential breakout continuations or fades for shorts too. This one's moved up so much I'd be okay with shorting this because of the move up. Yeah, the 3-year chart in this thing, it had been a $4 to $6 stock. Now it's a $39 stock. It could keep going on up to 70, right? There's no resistance and it's way over its MA line, so we'll see. But in any case, this one is in play, and it's worth keeping an eye on for our upcoming sessions. Next one, ZUMZ, the ticker Zumiez, whatever that is. I have no idea what company that one is, or what sector for that matter. But I like the fact that it's up at a 55-day high, just over that. It poked its head up as a result of the gap, taking it up over the 19.5. And just over, or just settling above the 20, right? The current consolidation area here is from 20 to 20.5. So from a trading standpoint, what I'm looking at is potential entries on this. And again, it'll probably gap tomorrow, so I don't think I would buy 20.7. I might buy 21.08, 21.1, but I'm unlikely to buy the initial half point following a 3-point gap from yesterday, right? It gapped up from 17.5 all the way up to 20. I'm going to be kind of skeptical and say, well, prove that you've got legs before I, get into it and breakout trigger over the 21.1 or so with the trailing stop at 20.9, just about a quarter point underneath that in case I'm wrong. But I'll buy a breakout over 21, but I'm going to sit aside 20.5 to 21. We'll see which way it opens. It might gap down to, say, 19.3 tomorrow morning, or might gap up to 20.8, depends. But it will gap one way or the other tomorrow because of the red ADX well up over 40. Again, this is a result of a gap, so it's not as important. The gap, the fact that it had a multi-point gap or a 2-point gap, and it renders the ADX signal not as significant for this particular ticker because the gap itself is what produced the ADX over 40. Okay, just like back here. See how this gap moved up? And that produced an ADX over 40. The gap today moved up. So that one is a gap play. So that's one to be a bit more cautious with. And that's why I use the 21 resistance. Let's take a look at a sell-off one here, ARNA. Well, oftentimes, or also get the red ADX over the 40 following a gap, or in this case, a sharp opening pre-market move, sell-off to the downside. What I liked is that the ADX moved up over 40 back here on this day too, following its gap. So these two are gap stocks, not as strong, not as important to look at, because the gap is what was largely responsible for these ADX over 40 signals. So you got to use some thinking, but still in play because of the magnitude of the gap. So ARNA, one to keep an eye on as well, just because the ADX is over 40. If the ADX stays over 40, and if this continues to take out new lows, that might be good for a sell down short, say under the 3.7 or so. I might buy it over 5 and a dime, 5.08 if it does get buyers. But I'm going to keep an eye on this one too because it did have that signal. And finally, VOLC, another gap ADX one. And again, remember a gap kind of renders the ADX indicator largely meaningless, but you will see ADX triggers over 40 or ADX signal points over 40 following sharp gaps, and so as a gap filter, it does have some minor utility. You just don't use it in exactly the same way you would for our standard breakout or breakdown stock. So those last three ones, CU, NZ, ARNA, and VOLC, not as good candidates simply because their ADXs were derived as a result of gaps, whereas others, like say JWN, was derived as a result of a continued strong trend that took it to new highs, right? Just like JCP or AU or some of these others, where really nice continuation move is what led to the ADX over 40. So anyway, those are the ones to keep an eye on. And that's what I wanted to cover for you in tonight's event. Now, I don't want to take up too much more time unless there's any questions, because those are the main things that you need to know. I mean, I taught you what I need to know, what I need you to know about how to use ADX. We can also cover a handful of Forex examples as well if you wish. If there's any Forex traders in the house, let me know. I'm looking for the FX 7-day. Let's see, we did have a question, so let me get to that. With the yen being as strong as it has, here's the dollar against the yen. The yen's obviously doing good down at 83, right? Selling down. ADX did correctly warn us about that sell down here with the ADX signal over 30 yesterday, midday, right? And it's sold down sharply from there, and earlier as well. Let me go through these real quick here. I'm going through just so you know, let me go through the currency pairs for any of our currency traders in the house. ADX, is it over 30? Yes. Did that ADX over 30 signal correctly presage or predict a breakout in our euro dollar? Yes, it did. See, ADX broke over 30 back here, and bang, it moved up sharply. Okay, in our euro yen, not so much. ADX broke over 30, and it did sell down, so it did make a move, but not a very strong one. Our euro. So again, another quick tip is, as with 55-day charts for our stocks, we'd like to see, or at least I like to see, 7-day highs or 7-day lows in our currency pairs. Anything inside range, not quite as strong, but still worth paying attention to, like this one. Our euro CAD, ADX broke over 30, and that did produce a good strong signal. So we're 4 for 5 now. ADX over 30 here, and it did produce a good strong breakdown, right? So that's another one. ADX over 30 here yesterday, same story. So you see that. The ADX, whenever it breaks over 30, like right here, you will see either a strong breakout or breakdown. Remember, it's a volatility, not a directional indicator. As soon as that thing plows over the 30, you're likely to see a sharp move. And whatever it is you're trading, over 30 for our Forex pairs, right, in our currency trade. So our Australia dollar, US dollar, ADX broke over 30, same thing. So yesterday morning, we got ADX over 30 pretty much across the board, and everything moved, okay? One way or the other, it moved sharply, and that was a good early lead indicator. And for the right side of the chart, obviously, if the ADX stays up over 30, then it's still likely to make a strong move. So it's the strategy, the trading strategy, is to just put immediate entry brackets right outside of the most recent 2 to 3 hour plays. So see this hammer, for example? This is a hammer on the 1 hour, the 60-minute candle chart in our, this is the pound franc. This is a hammer following a quick downtrend. So the buy trigger would be right here, right? Because ADX stays over 30. So that's Forex in several minutes to give those of you who are FX traders a quick heads up. Let's see, a question or comment here from Daryl. Let's see. Yeah, and some other tickers. Yeah, you guys tell me tickers, and we can pull those up as a team. That's what I'm here for you guys, to help you see if our ADX is over 40 or near it, at least for things that you might be trading. Again, a good example, though, you know, we like things like this. So, you know, some person in my live room this morning was asking me about Dell and Microsoft and Intel or whatever. Those are not things I trade because there's no volatility. This is the right type of chart for intraday and for swing trading. Nice, clean, well-defined trading lines. It's not choppy. It doesn't have a half-point range on the day. It's got a multi-point range on high volume and a nice, clean, in-focus trading line. So, you know, ask me only about tickers, if you would, that meet that criteria of at least 1 point high-low range and volume of at least 15 to 20,000 shares per minute. So let's see. Daryl's saying I see a big difference between ADX reading on a daily chart versus a 60-minute. I use a different vendor and don't have 60-minute charts, but they have an excellent scan feature. Why is the difference, and is there a different trading style for daily versus 60-minute charts? I know you can still use the daily. And by the way, the daily interval that I like is the 3-month. The only challenge to that is it's not as sensitive, or doesn't give you as early indicators as does our other time intervals. So daily charts are usually not good for active traders. Daily charts are the province of position traders. You know, if you hold things for several months, then daily charts may give you the signals you need. But most of us use at least hourly or tighter time interval charts because they give us those signals. For example, you know, this AU doesn't have, on the 3-month at least, doesn't have an ADX over 40. It's way down here, even though it did have a nice strong breakout. So this is not the right instrument to use to capture breakouts, whereas the interval 55-day 60-minute chart is, because it does correctly capture those breakouts, right? You can see a nice cup breakout here, another cup breakout today following the earlier cup. This one is a cup consolidation, finally broke out, right? So that's cup 1, this is cup 2. And so having that degree of specificity is an important thing to give some thought to. I don't know if the daily 1 month, yeah, and I'll see the daily chart doesn't give you anything. The daily 1 year still doesn't give you the right signal. So daily charts don't work. No, I use a very specific trading style because that's what works for me. And so that's one of the reasons why, you know, it's important to have white charts, white background, green and red candles, 60-minute candles on a 55-day chart that gives you an ADX signal line. That's now, again, you can adapt this, obviously. You might want to, you know, I'm always a fan of testing and experimentation. You can always figure out what combination of your charts will give you the ADX over 40 signals for breakouts and adapt that. So certainly you can use that with different software packages and so forth if you're not able to use eSignal or equivalent kind of thing. But just be aware that, you know, you don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish and and buy cheap charting software that doesn't give you good trading signals and miss out on good trades just to save a few bucks, when having a better system can potentially help alert you to better breakouts earlier that are stronger. So, it's just like using brokers. I like using interactive brokers because it's only $1 commission per side. That saves me thousands of dollars a year compared to a $5 or $7 commission, or it saves me tens of thousands of dollars a year. So, yeah, good point. All right, let's see a few tickers here. Bill's asking about Symantec. It's been in trouble lately, right? Symantec has been under sell pressure. Well, it looks like it's coming back. Okay, the last few weeks, big picture, it's under sell pressure all year long, right? From 19 down to 12. ADX almost over the 40. I would take a look at it if it breaks, say, 15.6 or so, and ADX is over 40. That would give us our 55-day cup breakout, right? 15.25 or so is the resistance. So anywhere over 15.5, if the red ADX line is over 40, would be something I would be looking at for a potential trading play. Obviously, again, these are not trading alerts, but that's where I would use as resistance to do a technical study on, on the entry. So 15.5, 15.6 would be the long trigger on this. And again, one of the things too you want to look at is, if you're ready to pull a trigger on something, are the trends down under 0.7 for long at the time that trade is going off? And if the answer is no, then you don't want to do the trade, because you want to have the trends in direction, and you want to have a 2-day high breakout continuation NASDAQ composite market and stock chart at the same time to make sure you've got the odds stacked in your favor for the strongest possible plays. Let's see, INFN. Yeah, that one looks good. I like that one. That's a good chart. Infineon Technologies, right? I don't know. I'm pulling that out of my memory, so for me this is late. I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning, so for me it's 6:30 Mountain Time here as I record this. But anyway, yeah, INFN looks good. Yeah, the ADX is over 40, and so yeah, I can add that to the list. Thanks. Cup breakout. Now, remember, ADX is over 40. Now, do you see, though, here's a good subtle point. Do you see how it's testing previous resistance at the 50? That's just kind of a fine point, but the fact that it has not broken over previous immediate, resistance tells me that it might also be decent for a short setup if it, in fact, does fail to continue on up and gets back under the 40. Then it might be worth taking a look at for a sell. I would not sell it, though, unless it gets down to, say, 9.7 or 9.8. I would want it to get under that cup high, under the 10. My earliest long in this would be, where would I buy this? I'd buy $10.58, about 10.60, 10.70, whatever on a continuation high. If, and only if, this red ADX line continues to stay on up here near the 50 at the time of entry. So, yeah, it's a good question. Another one, NG. Yeah, that one looks good to me. I like that one, actually. Thanks. I get some good trading ideas from traders, too, so good to have a team effort, right, to see what's in play. Yeah, I like this. Yeah, it looks like a good chart. I like the fact that it's a 55-day high cup continuation. What is NG? I don't know. But whatever it is, not as much volatility as I'd like. It's only gone up a couple of points, but it's a good chart. It's a good buyer's chart, and the ADX is at 55-day highs, right? Look at the red ADX line. See how that's higher than any previous point here? So this may well be a sell or a short if it gets under, say, 7.9. Might be a buy over, where would I do? I'd be conservative, say 9.1. I wouldn't buy the last 30 cents under the 9, but if it gets over the 9, I'll keep an eye on this one. Or if it gets under the, say, 7.9 for a sell, for a short, I'd be trading outside of that as my box range to set entry triggers around. So yeah, that's good. Let's see, SLW. Sounds familiar. Yeah, SLW, great chart today. And yeah, this one meets all the criteria points. So yeah, this one looks good. Again, not trade recommendation, but I'd be looking at along at around 25.7. This is about 30 cents above the high, right? You know, I use that as kind of a safety buffer to keep me out of false breakouts. Doesn't always work out. I still take a lot of stops, but they're inexpensive because I start off each of the positions with small shares. But yeah, 25.8 or so buy trigger, and a sell trigger, I'd make it under the 23. I wouldn't second guess it in here. And specifically, I'd use around 22.7 as a sell trigger for this thing, right? Because it's under, this would make a bear cup if and when it gets down there. So if it sells down 22.7, I'd prefer to just buy this on a continuation breakout over 25.8 or so. And you can see this is a nice cup and recently made near 55-day highs, and the red ADX is over 40. So yeah, good. Any other ones? You know, you guys should have your charting, and ladies should have your charting software pulled up and scanning through and see if you can find ones like this. Again, start off with your gain and loss list. You can look at some of the scanning sites like FinViz is good for the 3D heat map free. It's a no charge for their free version at finviz.com. I don't have any working relationship with them. And one of my traders at one of my Vegas seminars told me about them, and it's a pretty good place to look. I don't use that one very often, though. To be honest, I just use the leaderboard. I've done that for a decade plus. So I use the Control-L. I use that to identify what's in motion, and then put a secondary screen of whether or not the red ADX line's over 40, yes or no, and then are we at 55-day highs, yes or no. And if those things line up, an icing on the cake would be other technicals like bullish engulfings, three-line breaks on the 10-minute candle chart, new high volume on new breakouts over whole number resistance, and so forth. Also adds up for good triggers. Let's see what else. SBH. Okay. Yeah, for swing trade, not for day trade. It's kind of choppy though. I don't like this one as much. There's better ones out there, and the reason I say that is the range is only about 50%. I like a range of about 150%. So meaning if this is 8, this should be 12 or better up here. If it's only a 2-point range on a 55-day chart, I'm going to be waiting a long time to get my point or two out of it. So the pattern's fine though. I mean, ADX is over 40 and it is a 55-day high cut breakout continuation. I might buy this at 11.2. I kind of penalize it for being choppy, so by putting a trigger further out than just a 0.3. So I'd use 11.2 myself and looking at a potential buy on this. But I much prefer things that have wider trading ranges to work with. But yeah, it's a good Best Buy, another good example of one. Again, not a huge range, but we're at the 55-day high. Kind of buyers and sellers are fighting exactly at the 55-day high, right? ADX is just at or near the, I'll go ahead and add that one to the list. That one, ADX is right at or near the 40, along with our other gold and retail stocks, which are the ones, the mining stocks, ABX, Newmont, NEM, GLD, the gold ETF, the gold stocks and ETFs, and the other, like Agnico and other mining stocks all up today significantly, along with our retailers. So those are the two strong standout sectors today. You can see here our Philly gold is up 2.3% on the day, right? Here's that. So anyway, good plays in those and others for our current markets. In the retail, looks like semis are up, right? I didn't catch any moves in semis. Anybody see anything move strongly? I know there's SanDisk. I haven't traded semis much for many, many years because the range hasn't been there. Yeah, KLAC. I'm sure Intel's up, right? I don't trade Intel because the range isn't very significant. But our semis up even better than retail on a sector, right? Twice the sector moved. The gold sector moved up the strongest, which we know. Semis, though, were a close second, right? So Might want to keep an eye on semis and see if any of those have ADXs over 40 as well. Linear Tech, right? LLTC. Ghosts of stocks past that I used to day trade back in the 90s, right? LLTC, KLAC, KLA-Tencor is one of our favorites. Way back in the day, right? Yeah, it's still about the same as it was 10 years ago, right? It was a $40 stock back then. It's now a $30 stock now, but kind of sideways for a decade. So anyways, good to see some old favorites in motion. Anyway, I like, again, ADX over 40 for good, strong, clean breakouts of multiple points like these. Those are the ones that produce the best moves. And yeah, Bill, we already looked at INFN, so thanks for that. Remember, that's one that we had talked about at 11.8, the trigger for that one. Infineon Tech, I think, right? Autodesk, which won a fair use copyright thing, which is good, which good for those of us who produce content. Anyway, Autodesk is a good. Autodesk is a green one. Yeah, I like that one. That's good. Thanks. I don't mind buying that at, say, 33.3 or so, right? I will put in a buy stop order for somewhere up there. I mean, again, if you're a day trader and you're following this thing live and it's making a bullish cut breakout over 32.68 and you have a strong tape and the software sector is up and the rest of it on the day, then fine, fine to pull a trigger at, just any new high breakout over the immediate high, which is 32.68. But again, given our relatively choppy market this summer, I like to be a little more conservative. So 33.3 for a swing trader, so would be my long trigger, and just under the 31, right, for a short, because that would be under a 2-day low, right? This is around 31. I would use 30.7 or so as a short trigger if it starts to sell back down into the range. So always be prepared either way, by setting brackets around the current trading range, but always giving preference to an initial share size to in-trend breakouts rather than trying to outguess where these things are going to go. It's always better to trade the breakout in direction, right? For example, with NEM and EM, I was making the calls today to be out. I think it was 62.5 was the first and somewhere just over 63 for the second long call. But out up here was the exit. Somebody correct me if I was wrong. I think it was 63.08 and 62 point. This first was a first exit and that's second exit. Or this was first exit, that was second exit. Anyway, once things move up sharply, if you've nailed the first breakout, it's always a good time to tighten in a trailing stop before the market takes it back. In this case, the market just kind of went sideways for most of the day, took back a little into the close. But because this ADX is not over 40, I'm not real excited about buying in EM over the 64, right? Because I don't have that ADX over 40 signal. If, however, we gap up to, say, 64.25, and the red ADX is up over 40, say, tomorrow morning or the day after, and it's taking out new highs and doing another repeat, right? Another one of these things, then sure, I'll scale into it. But because ADX isn't over 40, I'm kind of leery of this, even though otherwise, without benefit of having that as a signal, I would not be as excited about buying this because it did take out the 55-day high. Yes, 64 is immediate resistance. Buy trigger over 64, but only if and when red ADX has flipped over 40, either in session or preferably a day ahead of the breakout day. So that's another way that I stay out of, say, a potential false breakout. So what I wouldn't want to do is have this thing open up, say, here tomorrow morning, go up to 64.1, and if I didn't know about this ADX not being over 40, let's say I buy 64.18 or something, it goes up to 64.25 and then immediately starts to plummet back down. I stop out at 63.9 and take a hit. Well, the reason would be because I didn't have support of the red ADX over 40 as a signal line to tell me that this is likely to be a continuation versus a one-shot wonder type of a play, right? So make sure that you use this as a disciplined, focused part of a healthy breakfast, of a healthy trading plan that's very step-by-step, and you understand how to integrate your ADX signal lines with things like the 55-day high cups and high volume breakouts and opening breakouts on cup continuation plays as I teach in my other materials. So it's good. All right, other questions? Let's see. Daryl's asking about Cree for a short. Well, it's actually pivoting. I mean, it's coming back to life here. I would buy it over the 54 if ADX gets over 40. It's not there yet, though, right? So I wouldn't touch this thing, with the 10-foot pull long unless it gets over 54 and the red ADX is over 40. Then I might buy 54 and a quarter, 54.3 with the stop at 53.9 or so, right? Just under that whole number. But because it's a nice strong pattern today, right? This is a good 2-day high breakout in Cree. So is that Cray Research or something? I don't know. Memory doesn't serve. But anyway, and yeah, definitely if ADX breaks over 40 and this takes out new lows, new low shorts under the 46, right? 45.7, 45.8, whatever, somewhere under 46, possibly even I would use 46. I wouldn't short just under 47. That's too close to bear cup handle that might bounce again. So I would wait for it to lose the 46 if I were to short that one. But yeah, it's a good one. That's a good chart. I like that. All right. Any other questions? I'm here for you guys, at least for another 8 minutes before I'm off to spend time with family here. Let's see. Bill's saying we're looking at major resistance in the E-minis, looking for SES and FAS to make a move. What do you think? Very good. Very good, astute observation. Let me pull up the mini chart here. I'll be launching eminiuniversity.com sometime later this fall. I know a lot of the guys in the industry, so I will be working with them to do various projects and the rest of it. But anyway, that's the one. It's not in market, so it's hard to see. There's a lot you can do. By the way, another just a quick tip for many traders is use an interview tabular 1 minute, kind of like a time in sales, to follow tick by tick what's going on using the close, right? And that will give you a quick minute by minute tick chart of, in market, this thing is tick, 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 tick. Follow that. That's a good tool to use, is a tabular chart. This is an interval tabular 1 minute chart for the minis, okay? But anyways, I digress a bit. As I was mentioning this morning to my other traders, yeah, the FAS, the FAZ, I also use SKF in addition to the FAZ because it's the other financial short, and the chart is a bit more sensitive. It moves a bit faster. For example, do you see how the SKF, let me open up the thing here. It's the ultra short financials, the ProShares ultra short versus the direction, which is FAZ. But notice how it moved, I guess, a bit faster than the FAZ. See how the peak is a bit higher? So anyway, if you're a micro trader like I am, using the time and sales, real time and 1 minute stuff, SKF in addition to FAZ. But yeah, definitely look at the FAZ because, and I had made a point this morning to my traders, is that because it broke to new 2-day highs, that's an initial bearish sign for the broad market. So even though we do have a 2-day high breakout later, following the market, it's still overall a long market, right? We are at major resistance, so I'm not buying until we break over, say that 23.25 or so in the NASComp, because right here I'm using this as resistance. So me and many other traders are likely tightening in trailing stops at a minimum on open long positions here because we're at or near previous highs. So this is a great place to get out of the market. You can always buy back in on a continuation. If this thing continues on up, which it might, this could go to 2,500. I don't know where it's going to go from here. I never predict. I react. When I predict, I'm usually wrong. Like Y2K, I did not trade much to the long side during the November, December right before of 1999, right before the 2000, because for those of you who were trading back then, remember everyone was worried about the computers are all going to get screwed up in Y2K, and there's a fear of a big global meltdown. We had one of the biggest, strongest rallies in market history, November, December 99. And I was largely sidelined because I was worried about swing trading. I'm still day trading it, but I was not swing trading into what was a very, very strong close of the year because I thought that the market would say, well, Y2K is coming. Kind of like nowadays, although healthcare and high taxes are coming, what in the world is there for the markets to be rosy about? Common sense, you'd think, would say short the market, on any sign of weakness. But as we know, the market's not governed by common sense. It's all just about technicals and price action, right? Because who knows what forces are at work manipulating the markets up and down and sideways and what have you. So we just have to ride the coattails of these things and do what the data tells us. So anyways, to make a colleague Peter would say, to make a fat story thin, we want to get out of the market or tighten in trailing stops under, definitely for all of my position / swing trades. I'm going to be closing those things out if we take out 2-day lows under, say, the 2260. I'm using that as my immediate support line for all my open swing trades. So I'm going to start going back to, I'm already pretty heavy cash, but I'm going to close out most of the remaining open long stock trades if we get under the 2260, because that is a good place to tighten in a trailing stop on the broad market, so to speak, right? Now, if I'm wrong and we continue on up, well, fine, I'll still be in. I will start working into or leveraging into continuation long plays in things like FAS and the Qs and the rest of it if we take out, say, 23.25, 23.30 on new highs, right? So if we continue on up, and this is just the beginning of a bullish cut breakout, which it might be, then I will scale in. But I'm overall a skeptic of the market, and I'm kind of just waiting for it to plummet down anytime now kind of thing. So just so you know, my bias, and so I am not trading. I did not trade size on this recovery because I was skeptical of the market doing this. So although I'm still not in heavy because on the long side for stocks, because I'm kind of a skeptic of the market. And certainly at previous resistance, it's a good point you bring up there, Bill, is that this is a good place to tighten in trailing stops. So all cash under 2260 is kind of a short story there. Yeah, thanks, Daryl. Appreciate that same productive discussion. Thanks. Anything else for me? We'll do this again in another, couple of months, 6 to 8 weeks. I'll do another ADX session. I don't want to do this too often. I'm doing 6 webinars this week. It's insane, and it's just me. Plus, I trade, so it's kind of a challenge for me to do everything myself. But I want to give you guys the best of what I can for what's going on in the markets right now, and hopefully, that list. Where is it? Well, actually, that's the old list. The new list is updated with some of your guys' picks, which were good, by the way, too. INFN, NG, Best Buy. I was Best Buy, but Autodesk. So those 3 were from you guys, Infineon, NG, and ADSK. We'll see how these things work out in the weeks ahead. Let me put this in alpha order. But jot those down. Do what I did. Just start a little quote box like this and plug them in and see if they move. Now, again, these are not long predictions. These are just in-play predictions that these things are going to move from their current price level. So, take a screen cap of where these things are at now. If you have screen cap software, or just print this out, whatever, file, print, okay. Print, create one of these things, print it out, and keep track of it. And I think that these, more than the other stocks out there, will move faster than the broad market, right? And the rest of the market cap weighted stocks within those sectors. These are the in-play ones, the strongest volatility stocks out there that I can find for you guys. So anyways, I hope that helps. And yeah, you guys take care. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate that too. Thanks, Ken. Great as usual. Thanks, guys. Anything else before we take off? Okay, well, that does it then. Stay tuned and, for more coming up, and you guys do well out there. Take care. Best wishes. What else? We've got a special going on chart scans. If you're interested in trying those, I've got daily alerts. I don't think I'll be doing a seminar this year. I will, however, be speaking at the Vegas Expo coming up in Las Vegas at Caesars Palace Saturday morning at 8 o'clock on candlestick and momentum breakout triggers with new stuff for whatever's going on in the markets in November. So if you're so inclined, you're certainly welcome to join me as my guest there. There's no charge to attend the Traders Expo, and that'll be coming up in November in Las Vegas at Caesars Palace, and I'll be there. I like Vegas. So anyways, y'all take care, and best wishes for good trading. Hope this makes sense. Try to keep it fairly straightforward and step by step, so hopefully you can replicate the scans and the overall process, how you populate this, how you set triggers right outside of current support resistance, how to work into winning positions, how to scale out of the ones that don't win, and how to make it work for you. So anyways, take care, and I'll see you guys later. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.